Hey guys, what's going on? So in this video, we are going to learn about the file and folder permissions. In the previous video, we just learned about user, groups, and sudo. And in this video, we'll be learning how to give file and folder permissions and why do we even need file and folder permissions. So let's begin. In Linux, there are three kinds of permission that you can give to a file or folder. One is called the read, which is normally designated by the symbol R. Then other permission is called the write, which is designated by the symbol W. And the third one is execute, which is designated by the symbol X. And you can combine these permissions to create a plethora of permission pools. Like you can give a file read and write permissions, and you can give another folder or file, only executable permission, etc. Okay, having understood that, let's dig a little bit deeper, right? Now, how would we even identify what all permissions does a file have and why do we even require permissions, right? Basically, permissions are given to those users or groups apart from the root user, because obviously a root user can do anything he wants. But if you want to restrict the access a user might have on a file or a folder, for example, if I want to restrict a user, say Pranav, to have only read access to my files, so I have to update some permissions of my file. Similarly, it will be the same for the folder. If I want Pranav to only see the contents of the folder, so I will give that folder only read permission. So he will be only able to see, he cannot make any changes to that folder, and he cannot even execute that folder. When I say execute, that means he can't change his directory into that folder. So let's understand the concepts of read, write, and execute in terms of file and folders by giving an example. First, let's learn about files. So in files, when we say we are giving a file read permission, that means a user can view the contents of that file by typing cat, which is the command for viewing the contents of the file, or he can use any text editors to actually view that file. And if I give the file write permission, that means the user can edit that contents of the file and he can make changes. The command that we use is either you can use echo or vi. Don't worry if you don't understand, editing files will be covered in later videos. Right now we are only interested in file and folder permissions. Now when you give executable permissions to a file, this means that a user can execute that particular file. And how do we execute any file in Linux? Well, let me give you an example. So I am logged in as OS Boxes, and right now I'm inside the home directory of OS Boxes. So if I hit ls, you can see the folder and file inside home directory of OS Boxes. As you can see, there is an executable file license, and this file I have created by compiling it from a C program that is right over here, that is license_key_check.c. This file contains the C program, and this particular file has been generated by compiling C program, and this file is now an executable file. So how would I go about executing it? Well, in Linux, if you want to execute any file, you would prepend the following two characters, that is .. Then you will type the file you want to execute, that is license. Now if I hit enter, as you can see, it says please enter the license key, and the correct usage is you should type ../license and then license. Let me do that. It's ../license space license key. So the license key I would say ASDFRG, something like that. And if I hit enter, it says wrong key. So as you can see, this is an executable file. Now let me put the correct license key, and if I hit enter, it says access granted. So that was a basic C program that I just created to show you how executable files are actually executed in Linux. And there is a typo, if you have noticed, it's not license, it's license. All right, pardon me for that. Cool. Now we have understood how to execute an executable file in Linux as well. Now we are going to jump into the folder part. All right. So in folder, when a user is being given read access to a folder, that means the user can view the contents of the folder by typing ls command. All right. Now, when that user has been given write access to any folder, that means he can create directories or, create folders or create files inside that particular folder. And if a person or a user is being given executable command to a folder, that means that user can change his directory into that particular folder. As simple as that. So I hope you understood what RWX or read, write, and executable for each file and folder means. Okay, having understood that, you might ask, well, if in that case, how will we identify the file or folder permissions? How can we see whether a file or folder has been given this permission and I should not be able to perform any particular permission? Well, one way is to just try it. If you get permission denied, then that particular permission is not being given to you. Well, the much simpler way would be to see the permission for yourself. And the command that we use is to type ls space -l inside the directory where that particular file or folder contains. So if I want to view the permissions of, say, license, which is an executable file, I would first navigate to the directory where license exists, and there I'll type ls space -l. Now if I hit enter, you will search for the license file or folder. In my case, it's a file, and you look at the first column. This is the first column, and this particular 10 sets of characters, if you count there are 10 characters, these 10 characters determine what kind of permission the license file carries. So having understood that, I'm going to now dissect what these 10 characters are, and I'm going to explain it in much simpler step. For that, let me clear the screen, and I have now opened the nano text editor, and inside this nano text editor I'm going to explain how you can read the file or folder permissions. So basically I have copied the permissions for the license. As you can see, I have copied that particular snippet from the previous ls space -l command, and this is the particular file license, and these are the set of permission characters that are being assigned to the license file. Now what we are going to do is we are going to dissect what these set of characters stands and what kind of permissions these set of characters give to the license file. All right, so let's begin. First of all, let me copy this particular set of permissions, as these are the characters that define what kind of permissions are being given to the license file. Okay, now let me create some partition, because that is necessary to understand how these permissions are given. So as you can see, I have divided it into 4 parts. The first part is the first dash, all right, right over here, or the first character. The second to fourth characters have been separated from here. Now the next 3 characters have been separated like this, and the last 3 characters are also being separated like this. So it's basically the same permission. I have introduced some space so that I can teach you the contents pretty well. Now the first dash always tells what kind of file type the file is. In this case, it's a simple dash. That means this particular license file is a file and not a folder. Now if in this case, instead of hyphen, if it was a D, so that means we can say that license is not a file, it's a folder. So that's one point to remember. And always remember, the first dash never tells you about the permission, it only tells you whether it's a file or a folder. All right, so okay, so that's that. Now we are going to move to the second set of 3 characters, and remember, can you make a common guess what these characters stands for? Well, exactly, R stands for read, W stands for write, and X stands for execute. So basically these 3 characters give permission to this particular license file. And why are there 3 sets of permissions, right? So there is a very good reason why we have 3 sets of permission. The first set of permission always corresponds to the user who owns this file. So do you remember how can we know whether a file is being owned by any user? Well, you will look at the 3rd column, right? Remember, I told you in one of my previous video that the 3rd and 4th column describe the owner of any particular file. So the 3rd column describes which user owns that file, and the 4th column describes which group owns that file. In this case, OSBox's user owns that file, and OSBox's group owns this license file. So first set of permission, that is RWX, will correspond to the user who owns that file. In this case, OSBoxes is the owner of license, and hence he has been given read, write, and executable permission. That means he can pretty much do anything with the license file. Now the second set of characters tell what kind of permissions does the owner group has. All right, so in this case the owner group is OSBoxes, and the owner group has R, that is read permission, and no write permission, that's why there is a dash, and an executable permission. So that means the owner group, that is all the users present inside the OS boxes group, will have read and executable access to license file. And finally, the last set of characters determines the permission for other users or groups present inside Linux. So basically all the non-owning group, that is other users and groups other than OS boxes, will be subjected to these rights. So for example, there is a user called Pranav, and Pranav does not own this particular license file because OS boxes and OS boxes, people in OS boxes group does, and Pranav does not belong to OS boxes group, hence he comes under others, and he will be eligible to only read and execute the license file and not edit this file. So I hope you have understood how you dissect the permission characters and identify what each permission stands for. Don't confuse root users to come under others, because root user is, as I said, a root user, and he is an administrator of Linux and he can do whatever he wants. You cannot deny permission to the root user, simply said. Now let's learn it by doing one more example. Alright, now let me exit, and I don't need to type it into the buffer. Let me clear the screen. Now let me hit ls. Now I'm going to hit ls space -l, and it's going to give me the long listing format. Now we are going to dissect the permissions given to the public folder. Alright, so let me copy this and let me open nano text editor, and let's just say hi, and we are going to paste it right over here. By the way, the shortcut for pasting is Ctrl+Shift+V and not Ctrl+V. Remember that. Okay, now let me bring it here. Cool. Now let me just copy the permissions of this particular file or folder. So Ctrl+Shift+C. Ctrl+Shift+C is for copy, and let me come down, and Ctrl+Shift+V is for paste. Now let me dissect. Cool. Now we are going to analyze what kind of permission or has been given to the public file or folder. So the first character says whether it is a file or folder. It's a D here, so that means it's a directory or a folder. Hence public is a folder. Now these set of characters defines that owner, that is the username, will have read, write and executable access. Now these set of permissions say that the owner group, that is all the users coming under OS boxes group, will have read and executable access. And finally, all the other users other than OS boxes or the users coming under OS boxes group will have only read and executable access, and the root user will always have read, write and executable access to any file or folder he wants. So I hope now you have absolutely understood the concept. Now let me clear the screen. So having understood that, now we are going to learn how we can give permission to a file or a folder. And the command that we're going to use is called chmod, short form for change mode. Alright, and this is used to change the mode of file or folder. And since we are tampering with the file and folder, hence higher privilege is required, or higher admin rights is required to edit. Hence we would be using the sudo command, because OS boxes comes under the sudo group. Well, by the way, if you don't know anything about sudo or root or anything related to access control, well, I have already made a video regarding that. I'll give a link to that video in the description below, or a card will appear on the top right corner. Okay, so as I said, I'll be using chmod command with sudo, and that's how we are going to edit the file or folder permissions. So let me quickly ls and create a file, say new file. All right, so I have created a file known as new file. And if I hit ls, it can be found right over here. And basically when you create a file, it already comes with a given set of permissions, and that we can check by typing ls space -l. And if I hit enter, and if you navigate to new file and look at the first column, these are the default permission that it comes shipped with. And RW is being given to the user who owns this new file, and only read access is given to the group who owns new file, and only read access is given to other users. Let me quickly populate new file with characters. For that, I'm going to use nano text. So for that, I'm going to use VI text editor. Don't worry if you don't know how to use VI text editor. Either way, I will be covering how to use text editors in upcoming videos. So I'll be typing, hey, how are you? This is Zbunker. Thanks for watching. All right, now let me just quickly close that. Let me clear the screen. Now if I hit ls space -l. Now if you want to view the contents of new file, I'll type cat new file, hit enter, and as you can see, these are the contents that we just typed a moment ago. So now tell me what will happen if a user Pranav comes and edits the content of new file. Will he be able to do so? Well, he can't. The reason is because he's granted only read permission, and Pranav comes under other users or other groups. If you want to see it in practical way, let me show you. Let me switch to Pranav user and let me provide the password. Now I am Pranav, as you can see, Pranav. Now let me hit ls space -l. Now I'm going to edit the contents of new file. Let me clear the screen and let me hit ls space -l again. Now I'm going to edit the contents of new file, and I'll be using nano text editor or VI text editor to edit the contents of new file. So I'll type VI space new file, if I hit enter. Till now I can only read the contents. Remember, I had not changed into edit mode, and as soon as I change into edit mode and type something, say, now when I save it, that is by typing escape and then :WQ, just look at the bottom right part right over here. I had written WQ. That's the standard way of saving a file using VI text editor. Now as soon as I hit enter, what does it say? Its read only option is set because we have given read only access to Pranav. Now add exclamation to override. Well, let's do that. I'll type :WQ and exclamation to override. Now as soon as I hit enter, it says can't open file for writing, permission has been denied. See, that's because Pranav is not being given access to write. He is only given the access to read. So I hope now everything is clear. Let me just quit from this text editor. Let me clear the screen. Cool. Now let me hit ls space -l. Now we are going to change the file permission of new file such that Pranav can now read, Pranav can now write, and Pranav can now execute the contents of new file. Well, how am I going to do it? Now there are two ways in which you can give permissions, and explaining those two ways without showing it to you will be a bit difficult for me. So I'll explain this concept as I go on about changing the file permission of new file. Okay, so now we are going to change the permission of new file in such a way that Pranav user, which comes under others, will have now read, write, and executable permission. Or simply speaking, the characters will be something like this: dash, then rw dash, then r dash dash, then rwx. All right, we need these three characters to be replaced here. Okay, so let's go and do that. For that, we will be using the chmod command. Well, first of all, let me switch back to OS boxes. So I'll type su os boxes. Okay, so let me type sudo chmod space. Now the permission should be given. If you want to give permission to the user group or the current user, you will type u. If you want to give permission to the group, you will type g. And if you want to give permission to other users, you will type o. So in this case, we want to give permission to the other part of this new file. Hence, we will type o. If you wanted to give permission to this particular part, that is for group, you will type g. And if you wanted to give permission to this particular set, then you will type u. I hope I have made myself clear. So I will type o for others. Now I need to add permission, right? And what all permission do I need to add? I need to add w permission and x permission, that is write permission and execute permission. So when I add write and executable, because I don't need to add read because read has already been given, I need to add W and X. So since I'm adding, I'll type plus. Then you mention W and X because you need to give the WX permission. You can write XW as well, it does not matter. Now space the file name, which is new file. Now if I hit enter, it has been executed successfully. Now if I type ls space -l, now if I hit enter, and if I now see new file and look at the last set of 3 characters, it has been changed to RWX. Now if I switch user to Pranav, let me provide the password, clear the screen, ls space -l. Now if I try to edit it using the VI text editor, thanks for watching, I'll type hey Pranav accessed this file. Now I'm going to save this file by typing :WQ and hit enter. It says cannot create backup file. Don't worry, we are either way going to override it. WQ exclamation mark, hit enter, and as you can see, it has been successfully completed. And now let me type cat new file to view the contents of new file and hit enter. As you can see, this particular line have been added. Cool. Now let me switch back to OS boxes. Okay, so now you might ask how we can then revoke any permission that has been given to this new file, right? So remember the previous time we used the command something along the lines of sudo chmod. We typed O plus XW or WX, it does not matter. I have typed XW in the previous command. So remember we used the plus sign. That is how you give permission. So in order to revoke the permission, you just simply type minus. Now this particular command says that I am revoking the executable and write permission for other users inside new file. And now I'll mention the file name, which is new file. Now if I hit enter, hit ls space -l, as you can see for new file, that permission has been revoked and he now has only read access. Well, remember I can also revoke that read permission as well, and that will completely render the new file inaccessible to other users or groups. Cool, let me clear the screen. Let me hit ls space -l. Now how can we give permission to multiple users or groups? So for example, I want to give permission for OS boxes as well as groups. So for that, you type something along the lines of chmod space, since we are giving permission for user and group, so you'll type U and G. Now you are adding a permission, so you type plus, and what kind of permission you need to add? Say we want to give executable permission because that's kind of devoid right over here. So I'll type X space new file, hit enter, hit ls space -l, and as you can see in new file, the user who owns has been given executable access, and also the group has been given executable access. Now what if I wanted to give a set of permission to all the users and groups present inside Linux? Well, that can be simply done by typing chmod space ugo, then plus or minus, and then you will type rwx or the combination of permission that you want to revoke or grant. So that's how you give permission to all the users present inside Linux. So let's just give it a go. I want to give all the users and groups write access, and the file is new file. As you can see, for new file, only write access for the user who owns the file, and it is not for the group, and it is not for the other users. So I have written UGO, and that is for user, group, and others. Well, you can also not use UGO as well, and you can also type only plus W. Both of them are the same. So if I now hit enter, now if I hit ls space -l, as you can see, new file now has write access for all its users. Now the second method that we're going to use to change the content, change the file permissions of a file or folder, is by using the octal codes. Now the octal codes are basically some numbers starting from 0 to 7, and these numbers will be used to give files and folder permissions. So I'm going to show you the table, the octal code table, and don't worry, there is an easy way to remember what this code stands for. You just need to learn 3 codes and that's it. So firstly, 0, obviously you don't need to learn that. 0 stands for no read, no write, no execute for any users. And the code 1 corresponds to execute access, code 2 corresponds to write access, and code 4 corresponds to read access. So you just need to learn these 3 codes: 1 for execute, 2 for write, and 4 for reading access. Okay, so now how are we going to generate the intermediate commands or codes? It's pretty simple. If you want to give read and write access, you just add up the read and write codes. Simple. So read contains 4, write contains 2. So if you want to give read and write access, the RW will have now the code 6, that is 4 plus 2. If you want to give read, write, and execute, so you'll add up the codes for read, that is 4, write, that is 2, and execute, that is 1. So when you add up, it becomes 7. So that's how you give the permission 7. Alright. Now, hope you have understood this. Now, I'm going to hide this table and I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What is the code for write and execute? You need a little bit practice. Write is 2, execute is 1. So the code for write and execute would be 2 plus 1 equals 3. What about read and execute? Now you got it. Read is 4, x is 1. So read plus x, 4 plus 1 will be 5. Okay, so now we are going to learn how we can use these codes to grant permission to file and folders. So remember the chmod command, we are going to use it here again. So now let me hit ls space -l, and we are going to use this new file as our target file. Now I want to give new file the following set of permissions. The user who owns new file will have read and write access, group will have read, write, and executable access, the others will have no access. So how are we going to give the permission, this set of permission to new file? Well, if you were to follow the previous method, well, it's going to take a lot of time, and that's the disadvantage of using the previous method, which has been overcome in this particular method. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to find octal code for RW, which is, I suppose, 6. Then we will find the octal code for RWX, which is 7. And then we'll find the octal code for no access, which is 0. And we will just type chmod space this octal codes space the file name, and it's as simple as that. So now if I do this and hit enter and hit ls space -l, now if you check for new file, it has been given read, write access for the user who owns new file, then read, write, and executable access for the group who owns the file, and no access for other users. With that, we come to the end of file and folder permissions. So I hope you now learned how to give permissions to file and folder. I hope you have enjoyed this video. So if you have, then make sure to give a like for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe to our channel, and share it to as many friends or people who are in really need of this course, because as always, Zbunker will provide courses for free. Thank you again for watching this video.